October Virtue and Kindness. October 1st, let virtue shine bright. Does the light of a lamp shine and keep its glow until its fuel is spent? Why shouldn't your truth, justice, and self-control shine until you are extinguished? Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 12.15 Seneca, repeating Heraclitus, writes that we mortals are lighted and extinguished. The light of reason suffuses the universe. Whether the wick of your lamp is being lit for the first time, after a long period of darkness, or even right before the proverbial big sleep, it makes no difference. Here is where you are right now, and it's as good a place as any to let virtue shine and continue to shine for as long as you exist. October 2nd, the most valuable asset, but the wise person can lose nothing. Such a person has everything stored up for themselves, leaving nothing to fortune. Their own goods are held firm, bound in virtue, which requires nothing from chance, and therefore can't be either increased or diminished. Seneca, on the firmness of the wise, 5.4 People put their money in assets, stocks, bonds, property. Others invest in relationships or accomplishments, knowing that they can draw on these things just as easily as others can draw funds from a bank account. But a third type, Seneca says, invests in themselves in being a good and wise person. Which of these assets is most immune to market fluctuations and disasters? Which is most resilient in the face of trials and tribulations? Which will never abandon you? Seneca's own life is an interesting example. He became quite wealthy as a friend of the emperor, but as Nero became more and more deranged, Seneca realized he needed to get out. He offered Nero a deal. He would give Nero all his money and return all of Nero's gifts in exchange for complete and total freedom. Ultimately, Nero rejected this offer, but Seneca left anyway, retiring in relative peace. But one day, the executioners came with their mortal decree. In that moment, what did Seneca rely on? It wasn't his money. It wasn't his friends, who, although they meant well, were a considerable source of grief and mourning. It was his virtue and inner strength. It was Seneca's most trying moment, his last and his finest. October 3rd, a mantra of mutual interdependence. Meditate often on the interconnectedness and mutual interdependence of all things in the universe. For in a sense, all things are mutually woven together and therefore have an affinity for each other, for one thing follows after another according to their tension of movement, their sympathetic stirrings, and the unity of all substance. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 6.38 A northeast Lamott once observed that all writers are little rivers running into one lake, all contributing to the same big project. The same is true in many industries, though sadly, even inside the same company, people selfishly forget they're working together. As human beings, we all breathe the atoms that made up our ancestors and flow into the same earth when we die. Over and over again, the Stoics reminded themselves of the interconnectedness of life. Perhaps that was because life in Greece and Rome was particularly harsh. Animals and people were slaughtered senselessly to amuse the masses in the Colosseum, events lamented in the Stoic writings. Countries were conquered and its citizens sold into slavery to expand the empire, the futility of which the Stoics also lamented. This kind of cruelty is possible only when we forget how we're related to our fellow human beings and the environment. Today, take a moment to remember that we are woven together and that each of us plays a role, good, bad, or ugly, in this world. October 4th, all for one, one for all. That which isn't good for the hive, isn't good for the bee. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 6.54 Inherent in the Stoic concept of sympathia is the notion of an interconnected cosmos in which everything in the universe is part of a larger whole. Marcus Aurelius was one of the first writers to articulate the notion of cosmopolitanism, saying that he was a citizen of the world, not just of Rome. The idea that you're a bee in the hive is a reminder of this perspective. Marcus even states the reverse of that idea later in his Meditations, just so he doesn't forget, that which doesn't harm the community can't harm the individual. Just because something is bad for you doesn't mean it's bad for everyone. Just because something is good for you definitely doesn't mean it's good for everyone. Think of the hedge fund managers who bet massively against the economy. They profited by rooting for essentially everyone and everything else to fail. Is that who you want to be? A good Stoic understands that proper impulses, and the right actions that arise from them, naturally carry the good of the whole, which is the wise person's only good. Conversely, good and wise actions by the whole are what's good for the individual. October 5th. Words can't be unsaid. Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue. Zeno, quoted in Diogenes Laertius, Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, July 1, 26. You can always get up after you fall, but remember, what has been said can never be unsaid. Especially cruel and hurtful things. October 6th. Looking out for each other. It's in keeping with nature to show our friends affection and to celebrate their advancement, as if it were our very own. For if we don't do this, virtue, which is strengthened only by exercising our perceptions, will no longer endure in us. Seneca, M. Oral Letters, 109.15. Watching other people succeed is one of the toughest things to do, especially if we are not doing well ourselves. In our hunter-gatherer minds, we suspect that life is a zero-sum game, that for someone to have more means that we might end up with less. But like all parts of philosophy, empathy and selflessness are a matter of practice. As Seneca observed, it's possible to learn to rejoice in all their successes and be moved by their every failure. This is what a virtuous person does. They teach themselves to actively cheer for other people even in cases where that might come at their own expense, and to put aside jealousy and possessiveness. You can do that too. October 7th. A selfish reason to be good. The person who does wrong to themselves. The unjust person is unjust to themselves, making themselves evil. Marcus Aurelius, M. Meditations, 9.4. Next time you do something wrong, try to remember how it made you feel. Rarely does one say, I felt great. There is a reason there's often vomit at crime scenes. Instead of the catharsis the person thought they'd feel when they let themselves get out of control or when they got their revenge, they ended up making themselves sick. We feel a version of this when we lie, when we cheat, when we screw someone over. So in that split second before your ill-gotten gains kick in, ask, how do I feel about myself? Is that moment when fear rises in your throat because you suspect you may get caught really worth it? Self-awareness and wrongdoing rarely go together. If you need a selfish reason to not do wrong, put yourself in touch with these feelings. They're a powerful disincentive. October 8th. The higher pleasure. Yes, getting your wish would have been so nice. But isn't that exactly why pleasure trips us up? Instead, see if these things might be even nicer: a great soul, freedom, honesty, kindness, saintliness. For there is nothing so pleasing as wisdom itself, when you consider how sure-footed and effortless the works of understanding and knowledge are. Marcus Aurelius, M. Meditations, 5.9. Nobody can argue that pleasure doesn't feel good. That's pretty much what it does by definition. But today Marcus Aurelius is reminding you, just as he reminded himself, that those pleasures hardly stand up to virtue. The dopamine rush that comes from sex is momentary. So is the pride of an accomplishment or the hearty applause of a crowd. These pleasures are powerful, but they wear off and leave us wanting more. What lasts longer, and remains more within our circle of control? Wisdom, good character, sobriety, and kindness. October 9th. Set the standards and use them. When the standards have been set, things are tested and weighed. And the work of philosophy is just this, to examine and uphold the standards, but the work of a truly good person is in using those standards when they know them. Epictetus, Discourses, 2.11.23, 25. We go through our days responding and reacting, but it's rare to really pause and ask, is this thing I'm about to do consistent with what I believe? Or, better, is this the kind of thing the person I would like to be should do? The work of living is to set standards and then not compromise them. When you're brushing your teeth, choosing your friends, losing your temper, falling in love, instructing your child, or walking your dog, all of these are opportunities. Not, I want to do good. That's an excuse. but, I will do good in this particular instance, right now. Set a standard, hold fast to it. That's all there is. October 10th. Reverence and justice. Leave the past behind, let the grand design take care of the future, and instead only rightly guide the present to reverence and justice. Reverence so that you'll love what you've been allotted, for nature brought you both to each other. Justice so that you'll speak the truth freely and without evasion, and so that you'll act only as the law and value of things require. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 12.1. Aulus Gellius relates that Epictetus once said, "If anyone would take 2 words to heart and take pains to govern and watch over themselves by them, they will live an impeccable and immensely tranquil life." The 2 words are, persist and resist. That's great advice. But what principles should determine what we persist in and what we ought to resist? Marcus supplies that answer: reverence and justice. In other words, virtue. October 11th. Honesty as our default. How rotten and fraudulent when people say they intend to give it to you straight. What are you up to, dear friend? It shouldn't need your announcement, but be readily seen, as if written on your forehead, heard in the ring of your voice, a flash in your eyes, just as the beloved sees it all in the lover's glance. In short, the straightforward and good person should be like a smelly goat you know when they are in the room with you. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 11.15. All of us have used phrases like that before. I'm going to be straightforward with you here. I'll be honest. No disrespect, but empty expressions or not, they prompt the question: if you have to preface your remarks with indicators of honesty or directness, what does that say about everything else you say? If you say you're being honest now, does that mean you usually aren't? What if, instead, you cultivated a life and a reputation in which honesty was as bankable as a note from the U.S. Treasury, as emphatic and explicit as a contract, as permanent as a tattoo? Not only would it save you from needing to use the reassurances that other, less scrupulous people must engage in, it will make you a better person. October 12th. Always love. Hecate says, "I can teach you a love potion made without any drugs, herbs, or special spell if you would be loved, love." Seneca, Oral Letters, 9.6. In 1992, Barbara Jordan addressed the Democratic National Convention and railed against the greed and selfishness and divisiveness of the previous decade. People were ready for a change. Change it to what? She asked. Change that environment of the 80s to an environment which is characterized by a devotion to the public interest, public service, tolerance, and love. 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 Why? Because, as the Beatles put it, in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Not just in politics, not just in tolerance, but in our personal lives. There is almost no situation in which hatred helps. Yet almost every situation is made better by love or empathy, understanding, appreciation, even situations in which you are in opposition to someone. And who knows, you might just get some of that love back. October 13th. Revenge is a dish best not served. The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 6.6. How much better to heal than seek revenge from injury. Vengeance wastes a lot of time and exposes you to many more injuries than the first that sparked it. Anger always outlasts hurt. Best to take the opposite course. Would anyone think it normal to return a kick to a mule or a bite to a dog? Seneca, on anger, 3.27.2. Let's say that someone has treated you rudely. Let's say someone got promoted ahead of you because they took credit for your work or did something dishonest. It's natural to think, oh, that's how the world works, or one day it will be my turn to be like that. Or most common, I'll get them for this. Except these are the worst possible responses to bad behavior. As Marcus and Seneca both wrote, the proper response, indeed the best revenge, is to exact no revenge at all. If someone treats you rudely and you respond with rudeness, you have not done anything but prove to them that they were justified in their actions. If you meet other people's dishonesty with dishonesty of your own, guess what? You're proving them right now everyone is a liar. Instead, today, let's seek to be better than the things that disappoint or hurt us. Let's try to be the example we'd like others to follow. It's awful to be a cheat, to be selfish, to feel the need to inflict pain on our fellow human beings. Meanwhile, living morally and well is quite nice. October 14th. Don't get mad. Help. Are you angry when someone's armpits stink or when their breath is bad? What would be the point? Having such a mouth and such armpits, there's going to be a smell emanating. You say, they must have sense, can't they tell how they are offending others? Well, you have sense too, congratulations. So, use your natural reason to awaken theirs, show them, call it out. If the person will listen, you will have cured them without useless anger. No drama nor unseemly show required. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 5.28. He person sitting next to you on the plane, the one who is loudly chattering and knocking around in your space? The one you're grinding your teeth about, hating from the depth of your soul because they're rude, ignorant, obnoxious. In these situations, you might feel it takes everything you have to restrain yourself from murdering them. It's funny how that thought comes into our heads before, politely asking them to stop, or making the minor scene of asking for a different seat. We'd rather be pissed off, bitter, raging inside than risk an awkward conversation that might actually help this person and make the world a better place. We don't just want people to be better, we expect it to magically happen that we can simply will other people to change, burning holes into their skull with our angry stare. Although when you think about it that way, it makes you wonder who the rude one actually is. October 15th. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Everything turns on your assumptions about it, and that's on you. You can pluck out the hasty judgment at will, and like steering a ship around the point, you will find calm seas, fair weather, and a safe port. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 12.22. Even a dog, Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, distinguishes between being stumbled over and being kicked. Yet if you've ever accidentally stepped on your dog, you know that the first reaction is usually a bark or a yelp or a quick snap of the jaws. In the instant, there is no distinction, just pain. Then it sees who it was, hears your soothing voice, and goes right back to wagging its tail. A virtuous person does not jump to hasty judgments about other people. A virtuous person is generous with assumptions, that something was an accident, that someone didn't know, that it won't happen again. This makes life easier to bear and makes us more tolerant. Meanwhile, assuming malice, the most hasty of judgments, makes everything harder to bear. Be deliberate and accommodating with your assumptions about other people and you'll find, as Marcus says, calmer seas and fairer weather. October 16th. Spread the word. Some people with exceptional minds quickly grasp virtue, or produce it within themselves. But other dim and lazy types, hindered by bad habits, must have their rusty souls constantly scrubbed down. The weaker sorts will be helped and lifted from their bad opinions if we put them in the care of philosophy's principles. Seneca, Oral Letters, 95.36-37. Stoicism is not an evangelical religion. You're not obligated to save anyone. There's no risk of hell if a soul remains in ignorance of the teachings of Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius. But now that you've learned and studied a better path, you can be of service to others. You can share your wisdom or insight with a friend or stranger, remembering that behavior is always a better example than a lecture. Everyone deserves to benefit from philosophy's principles, as Seneca put it. If you see someone who is in need of help, or has asked for guidance, provide it. You owe them that much. October 17th. The benefit of kindness. A benefit should be kept like a buried treasure, only to be dug up in necessity. Nature bids us to do well by all. Wherever there is a human being, we have an opportunity for kindness. Seneca, On the Happy Life, 24.2-3. He first person you meet today, passing acquaintance or friend, no matter the context, positive or negative, is an opportunity for kindness. Or as different translators have taken this line from Seneca to mean, it is an opportunity for benefit. For both of you. You can seek to understand where they are coming from. You can seek to understand who they are, what they need, and what forces or impulses might be acting on them. And you can treat them well and be better off for it. The same is true with the second person you encounter, and the third. Of course, there is no guarantee that they will return the favor, but that's not our concern. As always, we're going to focus on what we control, in this case, the ability to choose to respond with kindness. October 18th. For Nemes, there's nothing worse than a wolf befriending sheep. Avoid false friendship at all costs. If you are good, straightforward, and well-meaning, it should show in your eyes and not escape notice. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 11.15. It's pretty obvious that one should keep away from the wicked and two-faced as much as possible, the jealous friend, the narcissistic parent, the untrustworthy partner. At first glance, Marcus Aurelius is reminding us to avoid false friends. But what if we turn it around? What if, instead, we ask about the times that we have been false to our friends? Ultimately, that's what Stoicism is about, not judging other people's behavior, but judging our own. We've all been a frenemy at one point or another. We've been nice to their face, usually because there was something in it for us, but later, in different company, we said how we really felt. Or we've strung someone along, cared only when things were going well, or declined to help even though someone really needed us. This behavior is beneath us and worth remembering the next time we accuse someone else of being a bad friend. October 19th. Good habits drive out bad habits. Since habit is such a powerful influence, and we're used to pursuing our impulses to gain and avoid outside our own choice, we should set a contrary habit against that, and where appearances are really slippery, use the counterforce of our training. Epictetus, Discourses, 3.12.6. When a dog is barking loudly because someone is at the door, the worst thing you can do is yell. To the dog, it's like you're barking too. When a dog is running away, it's not helpful to chase it again, now it's like you're both running. A better option in both scenarios is to give the dog something else to do. Tell it to sit. Tell it to go to its bed or kennel. Run in the other direction. Break the pattern, interrupt the negative impulse. The same goes for us. When a bad habit reveals itself, counteract it with a commitment to a contrary virtue. For instance, let's say you find yourself procrastinating today. Don't dig in and fight it. Get up and take a walk to clear your head and reset instead. If you find yourself saying something negative or nasty, don't kick yourself. Add something positive and nice to qualify the remark. Oppose established habits, and use the counterforce of training to get traction and make progress. If you find yourself cutting corners during a workout or on a project, say to yourself, okay, now I am going to go even further or do even better. Good habits have the power to drive out bad habits. And habits are easy to pick up, as we all know. October 20th. Marks of the good life. You have proof in the extent of your wanderings that you never found the art of living anywhere, not in logic, nor in wealth, fame, or in any indulgence. Nowhere. Where is it then? In doing what human nature demands. How is a person to do this? By having principles be the source of desire and action. What principles? Those to do with good and evil, indeed in the belief that there is no good for a human being except what creates justice, self-control, courage and freedom, and nothing evil except what destroys these things. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 8.1, 5, What's the meaning of life? Why was I born? Most of us struggle with these questions, sometimes when we're young, sometimes not until we're older. Rarely do we find much in the way of direction. But that's simply because we miss the point. As Viktor Frankl points out in Man's Search for Meaning, it is not our question to ask. Instead, it is we who are being asked the question. It's our lives that are the answer. No amount of travel or reading or clever sages can tell you what you want to know. Instead, it is you who must find the answer in your actions, in living the good life by embodying the self-evident principles of justice, self-control, courage, freedom, and abstaining from evil. October 21st. Heroes, here and now. Such behavior. People don't want to praise their contemporaries whose lives they actually share, but hold great expectations for the praise of future generations, people they haven't met or ever will. This is akin to being upset that past generations didn't praise you. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 6.18. Alexandria, the city in Egypt, still bears the name of its founder, Alexander the Great, some 2,300 years after he set foot there. How cool would it feel to have a city named after you for so many centuries? To know that people are still saying your name? Here's a thought: it wouldn't be cool. Because, like Alexander, you'll be dead. You'll have no idea whether your name lasted down through the centuries. No one gets to enjoy their own legacy by definition. Worse, think of all the horrible things Alexander did to achieve what he did. He fought pointless wars. He had a terrible temper, even killing his best friend in a drunken fight. He was ruthless and a slave to his ambition. Is he really so admirable? Instead of wasting even a second considering the opinions of future people who are not even born yet, focus every bit of yourself on being the best person you can be in the present moment. On doing the right thing, right now. The distant future is irrelevant. Be good and noble and impressive now while it still matters. October 22nd. It's easy to get better. But better at what? So someone's good at taking down an opponent, but that doesn't make them more community-minded, or modest, or well-prepared for any circumstance, or more tolerant of the faults of others. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 7.52. Self-improvement is a noble pursuit. Most people don't even bother. But among those who do, it's possible for vanity and superficiality to corrupt this process. Do you want six-pack abs because you are challenging yourself and committing to a difficult goal? Or is it because you want to impress people with your shirt off? Are you running that marathon because you want to test your limits, or because you're running away from your problems at home? Our will shouldn't be directed at becoming the person who is in perfect shape or who can speak multiple languages but who doesn't have a second for other people. What's the point of winning at sports but losing in the effort to be a good husband, wife, father, mother, son, or daughter? Let's not confuse getting better at stuff with being a better person. One is a much bigger priority than the other. October 23rd. Show the qualities you were made for. People aren't in awe of your sharp mind. So be it. But you have many other qualities you can't claim to have been deprived of at birth. Display then those qualities in your own power: honesty, dignity, endurance, chastity, contentment, frugality, kindness, freedom, persistence, avoiding gossip, and magnanimity. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 5.5. It's easy to blame our circumstances. One person curses that they weren't born taller, another that they're not smarter, with a different complexion, or born in a different country. It'd be hard to find a single person on this planet from supermodels on down who doesn't think they're deficient in at least some way. But whatever your perceived deficits are, remember that there are positive qualities that you can develop that don't depend on genetic accidents. You have the choice to be truthful. You have the choice to be dignified. You can choose to endure. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be chaste. You can choose to be thrifty. You can choose to be kind to others. You can choose to be free. You can persist under difficult odds. You can avoid trafficking in gossip. You can choose to be gracious. And honestly, aren't the traits that are the result of effort and skill more impressive anyway? October 24th. The fountain of goodness. Dig deep within yourself, for there is a fountain of goodness ever ready to flow if you will keep digging. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 7.59. Today, we could hope that goodness comes our way: good news, good weather, good luck. Or we could find it ourselves, in ourselves. Goodness isn't something that's going to be delivered by mail. You have to dig it up inside your own soul. You find it within your own thoughts, and you make it with your own actions. October 25th. 2 tasks. What, then, makes a person free from hindrance and self-determining? For wealth doesn't, neither does high office, state or kingdom. Rather, something else must be found in the case of living. It is the knowledge of how to live. Epictetus, Discourses, 4.1.62, 64. You have two essential tasks in life: to be a good person and to pursue the occupation that you love. Everything else is a waste of energy and a squandering of your potential. How does one do that? Okay, that's a tougher question. But the philosophy we see from the Stoics makes it simple enough. Say no to distractions, to destructive emotions, to outside pressure. Ask yourself, what is it that only I can do? What is the best use of my limited time on this planet? Try to do the right thing when the situation calls for it. Treat other people the way you would hope to be treated. And understand that every small choice and tiny matter is an opportunity to practice these larger principles. That's it. That's what goes into the most important skill of all: how to live. October 26th. 3 parts. 1. Aim. The best and the greatest number of authors have asserted that philosophy consists of 3 parts: the moral, the natural, and the rational. The first puts the soul in order. The second thoroughly examines the natural order of things. The third inquires into the proper meaning of words, and their arrangements and proofs which keep falsehoods from creeping in to displace truth. Seneca, M. Oral Letters, 89.9. has 3 parts: the moral, the natural, and the rational have one aim. As different as they are, they have the same purpose: to help you live a good life ruled by reason. Not in the future, but right now. October 27th. We reap what we sow. Crimes often return to their teacher. Seneca, Thyestes, 311. It is ironic that Seneca would have one of his characters utter this line. As we know, for many years Seneca served as the tutor and mentor to the Emperor Nero. There is a lot of evidence that Seneca was, in fact, a positive moral influence on the deranged young man, but even at the time, Seneca's contemporaries found it strange that a philosopher would serve as the right hand to such an evil person. They even used the Greek word tyrannati, daskalos, tyrant teacher, to describe him. And just as Shakespeare observed in Macbeth, bloody instructions, which, being taught, returned to plague inventor, Seneca's collaboration with Nero ultimately ended with the student murdering the teacher. It's something to think about when you consider whom to work with and whom to do business with in life. If you show a client how to do something unethical or illegal, might they return the favor to an unsuspecting you later on? If you provide a bad example to your employees, to your associates, to your children, might they betray you or hurt you down the road? What goes around comes around, is the saying. Karma is a notion we have imported from the East, along similar lines. Seneca paid a price for his instructions to Nero. As has been true throughout the ages, his hypocrisy, avoidable or not, was costly. So too will be yours. October 28th. We were made for each other. You'll more quickly find an earthly thing kept from the earth than you will a person cut off from other human beings. Marcus Aurelius, M. Meditations, 9.9.3. And naturally, Marcus Aurelius and the rest of the Stoics were not familiar with Newtonian physics. But they knew that what went up must come down. That's the analogy he's using here. Our mutual interdependence with our fellow human beings is stronger than the law of gravity. Philosophy attracts introverts. The study of human nature can make you aware of other people's faults and can breed contempt for others. So do struggle and difficulty, they isolate us from the world. But none of that changes that we are, as Aristotle put it, social animals. We need each other. We must be there for each other. We must take care of each other, and to allow others to care for us in return. To pretend otherwise is to violate our nature, to be more or less than what it means to be a human being. October 29th. Character is fate. Each person acquires their own character, but their official roles are designated by chance. You should invite some to your table because they are deserving, others because they may come to deserve it. Seneca, M. Oral Letters, 47.15b. In the hiring process, most employers look at where someone went to school, what jobs they've held in the past. This is because past success can be an indicator of future successes. But is it always? There are plenty of people who were successful because of luck. Maybe they got into Oxford or Harvard because of their parents. And what about a young person who hasn't had time to build a track record? Are they worthless? Of course not. This is why character is a far better measure of a man or woman. Not just for jobs, but for friendships, relationships, for everything. Heraclitus put it as a maxim, character is fate. When you seek to advance your own position in life, character is the best lever, perhaps not in the short term, but certainly over the long term. And the same goes for the people you invite into your life. October 30th. Who gets the lion's share? Aren't you ashamed to reserve for yourself only the remnants of your life and to dedicate to wisdom only that time can't be directed to business? Seneca, On the Brevity of Life, 3.5b. In one of his letters, Seneca tells a story about Alexander the Great. Apparently, as Alexander was conquering the world, certain countries would offer him pieces of their territory in hopes that he'd leave them alone in exchange. Alexander would tell them, writes Seneca, that he hadn't come all the way to Asia to accept whatever they would give him, but instead they were going to have to accept whatever he chose to leave them. According to Seneca, we should treat philosophy the same way in our lives. Philosophy shouldn't have to accept what time or energy is left over from other occupations, but instead we should graciously make time for those other pursuits only once our study is finished. If real self-improvement is what we're after, why do we leave our reading until those few minutes before we shut off the lights and go to bed? Why do we block off 8 to 10 hours in the middle of the day to be at the office or to go to meetings but block out no time for thinking about the big questions? The average person somehow manages to squeeze in 28 hours of television per week, but ask them if they had time to study philosophy, and they will probably tell you they're too busy. October 31st. You were born good. The human being is born with an inclination toward virtue. Musonius Rufus, Lectures, 2.7.1, 2t. The notion of original sin has weighed down humankind for centuries. In reality, we're made to help each other and be good to each other. We wouldn't have survived as a species otherwise. There is hardly an idea in Stoic philosophy that wouldn't be immediately agreeable to a child or that doesn't jibe with common sense. The ideas within it go to the core of who we are and what we know to be true. The only things they conflict with are the various inventions of society, which usually serve some selfish interest more than they benefit the common good. You were born good. All of us have been made by nature, Rufus said, so that we can live free from error and nobly, not that one can and another can't, but all. You were born with an attraction to virtue and self-mastery. If you've gotten far from that, it's not out of some inborn corruption but from a nurturing of the wrong things and the wrong ideas. As Seneca has pointed out, philosophy is a tool to strip it all away to get back to our true nature.